This video is sponsored by Flight Stars, located at Falcon Field in Mesa, Arizona. Welcome to another Saturday with Safety Chip. We're going to continue our discussion about stabilized approach and the criteria that we discussed in the previous video. And we're going to use as a case study American 1420, an accident that occurred in Little Rock, Arkansas. Let's take a quick look at a video that goes over some of the accident facts. On June 1, 1999, American Airlines Flight 1420 at McDonnell Douglas DC-9-82 overran the end of runway 4 right at the Little Rock National Airport in Arkansas. According to the National Transportation Safety Board report, the crew flew the approach with severe thunderstorms in the area and over the airport. They exceeded the company's stabilized approach criteria without executing a go-around and touched down some 2,000 feet down the 7,200-foot runway, going 20 knots faster than prescribed. During the approach, the crew failed to complete the before-landing checklist and thus failed to note that the ground spoilers were not armed. The aircraft suffered a runway excursion, impacting an approach light stanchion, killing the captain and 10 passengers. The board determined that had the spoilers been properly armed, their deployment would have resulted in the aircraft stopping prior to the end of the runway. So let's discuss some of the details about what was going on. Remember that we said that in stabilized approach criteria, we have two gates, the 1,000 feet above the field and then 500 feet above the field. So in this incident, at 1,000 feet above the field, the aircraft is actually encountering wind shear, and it is clearly unstable at the time. They're off the localizer course, basically exceeding the limit of the course. They are having large fluctuations in airspeed. The winds are gusting at the surface to 60 knots, and the control tower is issuing alerts for low-level wind shear. The crew acknowledged those broadcasts, so they were aware of the low-level wind shear. The pilot monitoring, the first officer on this flight, did not call not stable go around, which is mandatory. And the pilot flying, the captain in this case, never initiated a go around. Now at 500 feet, the lower gate, they continued flying through the wind shear, and the airspeed was fluctuating well above and well below their VREF approach speed. The descent rate exceeded 1,000 feet per minute. And as you remember, that's one of the stabilized approach criteria. At touchdown, the airplane was experiencing a developing tailwind from the wind shear. And in addition, the aircraft touched down 20 knots faster than their VREF. So a lot of energy in the airplane at touchdown. And then another criteria, of course, is that the landing checklist should be completed. As we said in the video, the landing checklist never got done. And as a result, the ground spoilers weren't armed. And that became the single biggest factor in the airplane's inability to stop prior to exiting the runway at the end and hitting the approach light structure. They also landed well beyond the touchdown zone. So with all that extra energy, wet runway, no spoilers, long landing, it resulted in the fatal accident. The probable cause, according to the NTSB, included the following things. The flight crew's failure to discontinue the approach with severe thunderstorms at the airport. The flight crew's failure to ensure that the spoilers were armed and that the checklist was completed. The captain's failure to adequately brief the potential for a go-around on the approach given the weather conditions. The crew's failure to comply with the American Airlines stabilized approach criteria, which, by the way, is similar to almost every airplane or airline, rather, in the modern system. Fatigue may have been a factor not related to stabilized approach, but always a potential factor that creates our inability to use our judgment and make good decisions. The captain's goal orientation, his desire to complete that flight. It had been a long day, and they wanted to land in Little Rock and get the day over with. The failure of the first officer, who was the pilot monitoring, to challenge the captain. And the absence of a company policy that said if there's low-level wind shear alerts at the time you're on the approach, you need to execute a mandatory go-around. That's been since changed for most airlines. So several lessons can be learned from this accident. The only ones we're really going to discuss are the ones that go along with our subject matter, which is the stabilized approach. But there are many human factors, lessons, and things that you can learn from this approach. And it's a great read if you get a chance to read the Safety Board's report. So lesson 1 is that the stabilized approach criteria apply in all weather, whether it's a clear VFR calm day or a stormy day like this or a low IFR day. Those criteria are there and they need to be adhered to. A SIGMENT, a low-level wind shear alert, a PIREP of wind shear at the destination is a direct threat to our ability to fly a stabilized approach, and it demands our attention. A checklist completion is always mandatory. A simple thing that was left off, the spoilers being armed, was the single biggest factor in what caused the fatal injuries. Fatigue, as we said, is always a threat, so that's a lesson we can always discuss. And we'll do probably several discussions on fatigue alone. It's a great subject to talk about. And if in doubt, the right answer is always a go around. Go try it again or go somewhere else. And these are the things that we can step away with learning from this incident. It's a tragic case, but we should learn something from it. And I hope you will. I hope this is helpful for you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And always remember, think safe, act safe, stay safe. I'm Safety Chip.